1 Corinthians chapter 15. I have made this statement a number of years. I couldn't tell you exactly how many, but for a long time, that a big portion of false doctrines and false teachings comes out of this particular chapter, 1 Corinthians chapter 15. It's amazing that, and of course the translation helps in the misunderstanding. And by that I mean it's not translated correctly at all. It's really way off on many cases. But there's a lot of false, what we call doctrines. Doctrines being beliefs that have been concocted pretty much by the religious system, i.e. the church. I feel, my own feeling, this is my own personal feeling or opinion, is to keep people in bondage so that they feel that they have to be linked to the, quote, church system, to the religious system. And that's a tremendous deception. Okay, I want to read here, if you will, just follow me, verse 36. Thou, that which you sow is not quickened or lifed or come alive, except it die. Now that sounds like a paradox. It has to die in order to live. You have to think about that. That's kind of a paradox. It has to die so that it can live. So obviously the word die would mean something other than what we would think of as cessation of being. If you think die means to not be or to cease from being, then how in the world can you live if you die? So a little food for thought there. Verse 37, and that which you sow not the body that shall be, but bare grain, it may chance of wheat or some other grain. God gives it a body as it hath pleased him, and to every seed its own body. To every seed its own body. I could say it this way, and I will say it this way. To every nature its own nature. I'll say it this way. To every species its own type. In other words, the human species doesn't have the attributes of another species. So if I said you're acting out of your animal nature, that is completely incorrect, because an animal is an animal, a human is a human, a fish is a fish, and a fowl is a fowl, and they don't cross. So to say that you have an animal nature is incorrect, even though it's very common. People say, well, especially if you do something what we call wrong. You ever done something wrong and something right come out of it? Has that ever happened to you? I mean, that's happened to me a lot. I've made mistakes, done something that I shouldn't have or whatever, and then out of that come a different direction or something good. So was bad? Did bad lead to good?
Yes.
It does. Can evil bring about good? Yes, it does, and that's a conundrum. So this passage, verse 38, God gives it a body as it hath pleased him, and to every seed its own body. Watch this. All flesh is not the same flesh. In other words, the flesh of an animal is not the same as the flesh of a human, and the flesh of a human is not the same as the flesh of a bird, is not the same as the flesh of a fish. All flesh is not the same flesh. And again, to reiterate, just because you act like an animal don't mean you are an animal. And so what causes us to act like that? And I would just have to say it this way. All flesh is made up 80% of the same ingredient. You know what that ingredient is? Water. Now, I don't care if it's the flesh of a fish or a bird or all flesh is made up of that major ingredient, 80% water. Some more. Some are saying now that 90 to 95% are water. And so I think there's been a really misunderstanding from the scholars or the teachers on this particular thing, and it just really hit me, boom, like, wow, I'm 80% water or more. And so water always seeks its lowest point. That's the nature of water. You can pour water in any place and you watch water, it'll always settle to the lowest place. So water in its weight always pulls you down. And water always is moved by the sun and the moon. It's normal, it's natural. It's not wrong, that's just simply, that's how it is. Verse 39, all flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one kind of the flesh of men, another of the beast, another of fish, another of birds. See, he just nailed it. So to say that you have an animal nature is just completely wrong. It's a misuse of the phrase and the idea. And I want to kind of hammer or work with that. So if you will go with me, of course, to first Genesis, the first chapter. You can't go anywhere in the Bible if you don't go to Genesis, the first chapter. Genesis chapter 1 and verse 5. Just want to kind of jump in here on this passage of Scripture. Verse 5. And God called the light day. That to me is a beautiful phrase. God called the light, that's the word or in Hebrew. He called light day. The word day is yom. And the word yom in Hebrew means facets of life. It does not mean the idea that we're taught about a day. It means different facets of life. It means happy life, good life, long life, abundant life. That's what the word yom means. And there's 7 yoms. I say they correspond to the stick man, which is the most common thing that you find in Scripture. And it refers to you and me. It refers to this little character. I call him my stick man, that made up of the 7 days, or the 7 facets of life, or the 7 endocrine glands that build the physical body. So that when you see the physical body in its early stages, I'm talking about just days, all you'll see is just a little glob, and you'll begin to see what looks like a brain and a spinal column. And when you take the brain and the spinal column and you look at them, they kind of appear like a snake. Thus, you have the serpent on the pole, or the caduceus, which is the symbol of medicine. Any doctor who has got his doctorate degree in medicine, he will have within his diploma the picture of the caduceus, the staff, and that symbol is ancient. Oh, it's ancient. In some cultures, you'll have the caduceus with wings on it, or the serpent with wings on it, and the ability to fly. Always, in all cultures, no matter where you go on the face of the earth, the serpent or the dragon, which is the same symbol. The dragon is just the symbol with a snake with wings. The serpent and the symbol were always the sign or the symbol of divine wisdom. Always. So in Genesis chapter 3, when you see the serpent come on the scene, what you see is the symbol of divine wisdom that comes on the scene. And the reason that wisdom comes on the scene is that's what separates you and me from the rest of the flesh on the earth. And so, what I said by saying that is, you don't have the nature of an animal, but you do have the nature of the divine that's very little cultivated. And what I mean when I say that, it's very little drawn upon. We don't use, but the Scripture tells you that you have divine nature. In other words, you have a godly nature as well as a human nature. We don't live from it very often, but we're designed to live from it all the time. So that's why I use the stick man. The stick man is the symbol of that creation. That's what makes it. So, verse 5, God called the light day. So in other words, God said today, not this particular moment, but He's talking to this word yom. He said, you are light. I could say it to you. in your 7 facets of life, L-I-F-E, you are light, L-I-G-H-T. So I'm calling the day life, light, L-I-G-H-T. And I mean, that is the truth. That is a biological fact. Light, L-I-G-H-T, becomes life, L-I-F-E. And whenever that light, L-I-G-H-T, leaves your life, L-I-F-E, you cease to be in this current time, at this moment. So it doesn't matter who you are, that's what you're made up of. And notice what he says, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first. And that's word first. Just go to chapter 2. Go to chapter 2 and verse 24. The word first. Everybody say Echad.
Echad.
Echad. It's almost like the cod fish with the E on the front of it. Echad. That's almost how you would. That's kind of how you would say that particular Hebrew word. Echad. In verse 24, Genesis chapter 2. Therefore shall a man. That word man is not Adam. That word man is Esh. And the word Esh actually is used more than the word Adam in Hebrew for the English word man. But you haven't heard nothing about that word. All you've ever heard about is Adam. And then you always give it that name, Adam. And so we have been taught to think that we all come from Adam and his commingling with Eve. And we get it right here. And so when we read that, what we read right there for the word man is we always read Adam. And then when we read the word woman or his wife, we always associate it with Eve. And it doesn't say that. It doesn't mean that. It's not implying that at all. It's talking about you and me living life from the source of light. And you can't not. If you're living from the source of light, L-I-G-H-T. So, therefore shall man, that's Esh, comes from the word Esh, which is the word for fire. Light is fire. I remember when I was a little boy, I always liked to get a Cracker Jack, a box of Cracker Jacks. You get a box of Cracker Jacks for a nickel when I was a little boy. I tell you, I'm 59-year-old. Or older. We get a little, and you know what I always wanted as a little boy? They always had a toy in it. And you know the toy I wanted? Because they had different things in those Cracker Jack boxes. But the one, y'all remember them little old small plastic magnifying glasses? Y'all remember those? Yeah, y'all can't even know what I remember. That's the one I wanted to get. You know why? Because we could take that and put us a pile of leaves and we could start a fire with that little old bitty magnifying glass. We've done it many times. When I was just a little 4 or 5 year old. To get that little magnifying glass. Did you always want to get something?
I wanted the ring.
Oh, you wanted the ring. Well, I didn't want no ring. I want to start a fire. I mean, that's a boy for you. Mm-hmm. So, and because why? I was taking the light, L-I-G-H-T, of the sun and magnifying it into one place. That's what that word Esh means. It's taking the light and magnifying. It's taking that light that is fire and it's focusing it in one place. And that one place that it's focusing it in is this right here. The symbol for water is an upside down pyramid. The symbol for fire is a pyramid. And when you put the two of them together, you have the Star of David, which is a symbolic. It's fire in water, and when you mix fire and water, you have something. You have something materially manifest. You will not be materially manifest if you do not have the fire of the light in you. You will not be. And as far as you not being, you don't even know, or you can't know, that there even is such a thing as fire or light. In other words, let's just see this verse. Therefore shall a man, I'esh, leave his father and mother. That word father is odd, which means first source. What is the first source of anything and everything? It's light. That's what that word means. And his mother, that means the first source, which is light, has to have that focus of that matter, and shall cleave unto his wife. That word wife is I'eshah. They added a hey on the word I'esh. And so that word I'eshah, so what did they do? They gave that fire feminine principle. In other words, the ability to recreate. Because in the fire is a seed. That seed is that which has the imprint to create. And so what happens right here, and notice it, shall leave his father and unto his I'eshah, and they shall be one. You see that word one? That's exactly the same word we just read over there in Genesis 1:5 for the word first. And I'm trying to show you that the word first in Genesis, talking about the first day, is not talking about successions of days. The word one and the word first are from the same identical word in Hebrew. It's the Hebrew word ikad, and it means together. It means to make the two one. To make them one body. That word flesh that we said, all flesh is not the same, but make them one flesh. Make them one body. So what have you done? What do we have here? We have joined fire. That's that symbol right there, pyramid. Into water, that's that symbol right there, upside down pyramid. We've made them one. And so now then, I want you to hear this. You don't have God without flesh matter, and you don't have matter without flesh God. So the two have now become one. So you are, this is a heresy, you are God materialized and manifested in this physical world. And it hadn't got anything to do with how you act and how you respond to the life that you have been given. You can react and respond in any way that you choose, but you have to remember it bears fruits. It brings forth results. And, we don't teach that. We just say, well, if you don't believe the way we believe, if you don't do what we do, if you don't act the way we act, you're going to go to hell. And then make you feel horrible, try to put you down, try to condemn you, try to beat you up because you don't act like us. The truth prevails, period. And you know what? We say, well, if you're of the truth, if you're telling the truth, then you won't lie. That's not the truth. Have any of y'all ever lied? Yeah, look there. Y'all been, well, some of you ain't been honest. Somebody said, I ain't going to answer that. Your lie said, yes, we have. So does your lie, being a little bitty lie, is your lie not as bad as all the lies coming out of Washington, D.C.? All the lies coming out of Washington, D.C., bless God, they deserve punishment, don't they? They need to go to jail. Somebody got to pay, right? Is that not what they're saying? Somebody's got to pay. What about mine and your our little bitty lies? Our little lies. We don't do that, do we? Yeah, we do. We do. We do it unconsciously many times. It's like, I was trying to think of something as an example that I called this guy, and he said, oh man, I meant to call you. Matter of fact, I had a couple of calls, but I was just fixing to call you. Lie. Truth of the matter, he didn't have any calls. He just totally forgot to call me. That's all. He got busy with something else and forgot to call me. Oh, that don't count, Brother Lynn. Why don't it count? It's a lie. No, we have put degrees on it, haven't we? I know we have. And we do so many things because we haven't really availed ourselves to the truth and let the truth live in us and live through us and live big in us and live. But that's where we're going. We have crossed. This is a astrological fact. Period. The sun, the moon, the galaxy. It moves in a procession. You can't change it. It moves in this, and it's in stone. Nothing changes. The sun doesn't stand still, folks. Not even for 24 hours to try to create a Bible story. It don't happen. If it did, it throws everything out of kilter out there, and there'd be a hell of a mess. I promise you there would be a lot of stuff going on if that's the case. Everything moves in its procession. Everything. I don't care what it is. God set it in that motion, and God has set that thing in stone. So, the truth is prevailing now because we actually are in the Aquarian age. And the Aquarian age is the age of what? The water bearer. And what is the water? The water is the physical. It's the material. But what else is it a symbol of? The truth. Water is a symbol of truth. Truth. We are in an age when truth will prevail, period. Truth will win out over a lie every time if we will put our confidence in that and the truth, and we stand strong on that, then we will see because we're in that age right now. And we are a picture. When I'm saying picture, I'm not talking about P-I-C-T-U-R-E. I'm talking about, how do you spell picture like it's a container for water?
P-C-H-E-R.
Yeah, okay. So that's the picture we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to put a T in it, right? You have to, so we are the picture of water. We are that vessel that contains the water. And the water has intelligence. The water has emotions. The water is very emotional. We don't know that. And you know, we started doing this, a lot of years ago. This book came out in 2001. Emoto's little book called The Hidden Message in Water. And this thing, all of a sudden, it became a New York Times bestseller. And what he did a lot of experiments with water, and he began to realize that if you say harsh words around water, now it won't work with tap water. It has to be fresh water, spring water or river water. It won't work with tap water. But they took fresh water and they put words around that water, or music or sounds that were uplifting, that were harmonious, that were happy, and the water completely responded to it all the time. But then they put harsh words around it: hate, anger, confusion, shame, blame, fear, and the water responded to that in just the crystals. He's got dozens and dozens of pictures in this book about how the water responds to the different words or different vibrations of energy. Because water realizes that you and I are energies. Matter of fact, let me just read you something out of the front of this little old book. It says, he said, I have studied water for many, many years. The realization that water has the ability to copy information has changed my life. Did you hear that? Water has the ability. So if you and I, and we started doing it, I started doing it, gosh, years ago, that if you have water in a picture that you put your drinking water in, and write on that picture, happy, joy, peace, love, the water responds to that, and you say, why, that's just about as foolish as anything I ever heard. But it works.
Take it now to the fact that what you had mentioned earlier, that we're at least 80% water, or the plants, the percentage of the water. If you will speak the positive and influence that into your life, it affects this.
My point exactly.
Because of the
my
water.
point exactly. Because and they have done this same thing, not just with water. They've done it with plants.
Yes. But it's because of the water in the plants.
Exactly. It's the water responding. That's what I want you to see. I want it to ring into you, because we have moved into the Aquarian age. The Aquarian age is the age of the water bearer. It's not only the age that truth is going to just continually cover the earth like the waters cover the sea. That's true. It's happening. It is happening. But we are that water vessel. We are that vessel of truth. And that's what he's saying. He says, the realization that water has the ability to copy information has changed my life. After making this discovery in America, I brought it back to me to Japan and have since used this information, copying function of water, to help people recover their health, to help them get strong. The Hidden Message of Water. It's a little bitty book. He wrote several after this one. He wrote this in 2001. He's wrote 3 or 4, maybe 5 more books since this one, and they become bestsellers. But that was his New York Times best-selling book.
And then that understanding of water explains something Wayne Dyer taught about years ago, about the serotonin in your body responding to being the giver of a good deed, the receiver of a good deed. Your serotonin levels rose in your body. Being in the very presence and witnessing a good deed to a lesser degree, people's serotonin level came up. That's the water in your body responding to being in
Absolutely.
a good atmosphere, period.
Now what about people who have sicknesses? Like Amoto said, he had a lot of people help recover their health. He had to bring their health back because of this information that water carries and bears. And so how does that work in us? Well, again, just like Steve saying, by speaking words to them, by kindness, but there has to be a receptive part on our part. You can just pour it over us or pour it over, and many times it might just pour over me and not be as effective as it would if I took it within me. And I want to talk about that just because this word "ecod," let's everybody say that again, ecod. Now if you can take out of your mind that it don't mean first, and take out of your mind that it don't necessarily mean one, but it does mean one when you realize make the two one. When you realize it means together. That's what the word ecod means. It means together. So now I'm not talking about a first day. I'm talking about making something that's two one. Bringing them in together. Now what is it that Genesis 1, right out of the opening, starting gate, verse 5, that we're talking about making two one. We're talking about making spirit and matter one entity. We're talking about making God and flesh one entity. That was God's plan. That's always God's plan. That's why Genesis 1, 2, and 3 is a picture of the pattern, the blueprint, the plan of God's house that God intends to live in and to move in and to be in and to experience in, and that house is you and me. Period. Now that's a completely different way of seeing it than what we've been taught, because we haven't been taught exactly the way we should be taught. So I started this teaching, quite a few weeks back, and I call this the balance of power. And the reason I said that is there is a power in water, and there is a power in fire. And when you merge those powers together and balance that power, that's when we get great results. But when you don't merge that together and you don't balance that together, if you just have fire, you can burn your house down. But if you use it with wisdom, you can cook your meal. You can heat your house. You can cook. It's knowing how to balance. Religion will help you keep it out of balance. Religion will take your house and it will make your house so unbalanced. And that's why people don't want to be involved in religion. Most people don't want to be involved in religion. The reason people go to churches, some of the larger churches, they don't go because they're getting spiritual food. They go because of the social events that are there. And those are good things. I'm not throwing off on them. That's the real good thing that they offer. They do offer social things that people long for. People like that. People need that. People can gain from that. So I'm not condemning. I'm not saying anything bad about it. I'm just simply saying if they would offer the other side, if they offer the fire and show how that the light has merged itself into them and the two have become one. That's not something that you go and pray a prayer and say, well, I got saved, now I'm going to heaven. Now your focus is outside you rather than where the focus should be, and that's inside you. Because everybody that I know of that goes to a religious gathering, they got saved so that they can shun this water place, this earth place, this place of chaos and corruption, this place that pulls you down. They want to shun this, burn it up, kill it, destroy it, get rid of it, and let's all go to heaven. That's it. So it's always, it's a picture of something that's outside me. So in Genesis chapter 1, I want to, this is called the Kabbalistic tree of life. The tree of life. That's the Kabbalistic tree of life, and it has what's called 10 sephirots. The word sephirot in Hebrew actually means emanations. Got translated for the word said, because God doesn't have vocal cords unless He's inside you. Outside you, God don't have vocal cords. God can, as wind, make the sounds of wind. And there are basically 3 sounds of wind that you can make and never use your vocal cords or never pronounce a word. And that's the guttural, that's the nasal, and that's by your movement of your lips. You can make 3 different sounds just by wind. And that's the spirit, that's spirit. So there are 10 what's called emanations or sephirots. There are also 10 times that this word right here is used in Genesis chapter 1. W-A-T-E-R. It's used 10 times, water. So I want you to look with me in Genesis chapter 1 right here. And let's look at verse 2. It says, "And the earth was without form and void, darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." You see that word waters? I want to spell this word for you. Let me do it different. Let me do it a little bit different. I believe she just laid an egg, didn't she?
No, since you want to do that different, she's telling you you laid the egg.
She did. That's the thing about being on the farm. I wanted to make a distinction in those two. They're so close. This is called Mem 40, and this is called Mem 600. And so in Hebrew, you have 1 through 9. Those are what I call the pattern. And then you have 10 through 90. This is how Hebrew counts. And I call this matter. And the reason I do is because it's dual. It's to 2. And then you have 100 through 900. This is how... See, it doesn't count 11, 12. That's not in Hebrew. If you wanted to do 11 in Hebrew, you just have to say 10 and 1. That's how come King James, actually King James is pretty accurate in that kind of doing numerics, because there is no 11, 12, 13. That doesn't exist. That's in our English way. You see, we use English, which is a very, very poor way to communicate spiritual truths, because we lack the ability in words to communicate in the English language. And I've said this, you've heard me say this before, it's just like the word love. I said, well, I love my truck. I love hot dogs, I love my dog, I love my wife, I love my kids. And that's all the word that I had to use. So my hot dog and my wife pretty well are on the same category. My truck and my dog. But you see, in Greek or Hebrew, it's completely different. There's a different word for the love of my dog or my hot dog or my wife. You see what I'm saying? So in English, it's just like Sanskrit. When Sanskrit uses this word, no thing, they do not mean the same thing we would have in English when we say no thing or nothing. Combine it together. It doesn't mean that at all. Matter of fact, no thing in Sanskrit means everything. But it can't be named. There's not any way you can tag it. There's not any way you can call it. You can't separate and say, it's this, it's this, it's this. Why? It's no thing in particular. But when we look at it in English, that's why people get so confused when they're studying Hindu, or if you're reading the Quran, or you're reading some of these Sanskrit books that are Hebrew, when you're seeing these words, they don't mean the same thing in English that they will mean in these different words, in these different languages. These languages, like for instance, Egyptology, when you study Egyptology, it's signs and symbols. It's not just words, it's signs and symbols. And so when we can read the signs and symbols, it's completely different than trying to read English the way we read English. So no thing is everything, and in English it's hard for us to wrap our brain around. So that's why they use these patterns. And this 1 through 9 is the pattern. 10 through 90, it's the matter, or it's the dual, because there are two characters in the numbering system. And then 100 through 900, it's back to divine plan. So these glyphs, so if I said this is water, this is dual, two characters in it, 40. So every place you're going to see this usage of this mem 40, it will be around water. It'll always be, like for instance, if you said Moses in Hebrew, the way you would say Moses in Hebrew would be Mem, Shin, Hey, Moshe. That's how it would say Mem 40. So Moses' name has to do with water. If I spelt Adam, Aleph, Dalit, Mem, the name Adam has to do with water. Always has to do with the dual. And the whole thing about duality is make it one. If you don't make it one, it's always a divided house, always pulling against itself, always trying to trip itself up and make you fall. That's its nature. It's not wrong. That's just its nature. It can be trained. This mem 600 means to bring it back to its divine plan. Well, the divine plan is a higher plan than the material plan. But they are designed to be merged or made one, to be married together. So if you follow that little idea right there, this is the word water. It's used 10 times in the book of Genesis in the very first chapter. And then this word, well, let me just put this word right here. That's the sheen. This has a 300 value. And then notice this. And notice this. This is the word for water, mayim. That's how it's mayim. This is the word for water, mayim. But when I put the sheen, this word sheen, 300, it means breath. Shh, breath. Now when I put that sheen on front of water, do you know what word that is in Hebrew? That's this word right here. Heaven. The word heaven hasn't got anything to do with something in space. It hasn't got anything to do with something in space. If I take this word, sheen, mem, this is 40, yod, that's 10, this is 600, and I broke this word down into duality, sheen, mem, this is 40, this is 300, 300. Okay, and I total that together, reducing it to its lowest number. What would that be?
7.
Exactly, that would be 7. And I took this yod and final mem 600 and 10, reduced it to its lowest number. What would I have?
7.
7. So the word heaven has two words in it, shin mem, and the other word, yod mem, which is the waters of below and the waters above. Have you ever heard about the waters of below and the waters above? Genesis 1:7. What were the waters above and the waters below? You know what I always told people 30, 40 years ago? I said, well, that's the water in the clouds above, and that's the water in the rivers and the oceans and the lakes below. That's what it's talking about. The water, no, it had to do with the two aspects of my nature. The waters above and the waters below. My human nature and my divine nature. That my work is to do just exactly what it says here in verse 5. My work is to make the two one. To marry or merge this heaven on in earth. Not to take it somewhere. Not to say, well, I got saved, I got a home out there. My house is 2 blocks down from Jesus. It's because I've done a bunch of work for Jesus. So I'm just 2 blocks away from the mansion that he's got. Bull. I mean, you know, people can go to church and sing these songs about all that, get all worked up, get all excited and cry and get happy and, oh God, won't it be wonderful when we get there? Hell no, it's wonderful here. We've got to bring up there, out yonder somewhere, in here. We've got to bring it home. We have got to merge the two. We've got to come to the place. That's where the truth is at. The truth is you are heaven. You're not going to be that. You're heaven in this earth. In this earthen vessel. That's exactly who you are, and that's exactly where you're supposed to be at. Now go with me to Genesis chapter 2. It's taking this a little bit further. Different words that I want to try to combine or pull this together into. Let's see, I said flesh. I use this word in Genesis 2:4. You remember we use that word flesh? In Hebrew, that word flesh is basar. Let's see, I think I wrote that down. Yeah. Basar in Hebrew, it's this. Beth, that's number 2. Sheen, that's 300. Put the numbers up here. Rash, that's 200. Now that's the word for flesh in Hebrew, and it's the word basar. B-A-S-A-R. Basar. But if I total that together, what do I have?
7.
Exactly. 7. It comes back to the stick man. Everywhere you're going to look in Scripture, it's going to come back to the stick man. So when you take a Hebrew word and you want to find out the root of that word, what's the part of the pattern, the plan of that word, all you have to do is do gematria on it, reduce it to its lowest common denominator, and you will find where that word will fit in the pattern. So basar, flesh, your flesh, sorry to say, your flesh, glad to say, your flesh is a materialization of divine or divinity. And that God planned it to be that way. Now, look at something else here with me in Genesis 2:24, because I want to run through this pretty quickly. I've got a few things I'd like to read to you out of these books. Verse 7 says, "And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." Man became a living soul. You see that word, living soul? How did he become a living soul? Well, number one, the ruach, which is the breath, which is the same identical word for God. The Spirit, same word. I'm saying the same identical word. Matter of fact, God breathed him. And when God breathed him, what happened? He became a thing alive. He became a living soul. He became a living nephesh. The word nephesh in Hebrew, actually, if I were to take the word soul, that's the word nephesh, and if I were to reduce it, do the same thing with gematria, with the word soul, you know what the numeric value of that word would be? 7. Don't have hardly room on the board to put it up there, but I'll just go ahead and tell it to you. It's non-fe-shin. That's how it's pronounced, non-fe-shin. In Hebrew, the numeric value of the word soul is 7. And why do I say that? Because you see that? You see that man shall become a living soul. Why? Because he was breathed by the breath of life. And God breathed into him. God took spirit. Now I want you to follow. Here, everybody say spirit.
Spirit.
Ruach. Spirit, ruach. And that spirit is the breath. That's spirit. I quit doing that, guess what? Spirit will linger for just a little while. I think some can pause the spirit for 5-6 minutes by holding their breath. But after that, guess what? The spirit says, hey, I'm gone. and guess what? You ain't no more. Oh yeah, you have a carcass there, and we say, yeah, don't even look natural. But you ain't there no more. That's the word spirit, breath. But hold your place here and go with me to a couple of passages real quick. The book of Proverbs, chapter 29. It's going to be kind of a Bible drill here real quickly. Proverbs, chapter 29. So if you can probably get your indexed, it'll be quicker. I want to go to Proverbs 29, and I want to go over there to Ezekiel and then Daniel. They're not close to each other. Ezekiel and then Daniel. So if you find Ezekiel, you're just right next door to Daniel. And we'll look at these two passages. I just want to show you something because I'm trying to set you up for something that I'm going to continue to share on. And that I want to share on is the fact that God has merged the two together. God is in God's idea, you are God. You are the material manifestation of that which is. And without that, there's nothing. And I mean that in the English of nothing. I don't mean that in the Sanskrit idea of nothing or no thing. I mean, there's just not anything at all. But if we merge that, we've got something. So let's look at Proverbs chapter 29. Look at verse 11 with me. You there? Proverbs 29:11. It says, a fool utters his mind. You see that word mind? That's a ruach. Can the word ruach, spirit, be used for mind? Absolutely. Absolutely. You see, in Sanskrit, there is a ideology that you want to get to a place of no mind. So if you can get to a place of no mind, then you have reached divinity. Well, what if divinity is mind? All you got to do is look this up. Just make you a note beside it, and you can check me if you'd like to. But you'll see that word mind right there is the Hebrew word ruach. It's the identical same Hebrew word used in Genesis 1:2, and the spirit, ruach. Begin to move. So go with me to Ezekiel real quick. Ezekiel chapter 11. I'm just picking out a few places to let you see this. Not all, but just a few. Ezekiel chapter 11 and verse 5. It says, and the Spirit of the Lord fell upon me and said unto me, speak. Thus saith the Lord. Thus have you said, O house of Israel, for I know the things that come into your mind. You see that word mind? That's ruach. That's the word for spirit. So you mean the word spirit can be interchanged for the word mind? Yes. So if you're going to do away with your mind, you're going to get rid of your spirit. I promise you, you don't want to do that. That's really not a good thing to do. You don't want to get rid of your mind. You want to enhance your mind. Daniel chapter 5, real quickly. It's just next door to Ezekiel. Just flip there a few pages to Daniel chapter 5. And look at verse 20 with me. Verse 20, Daniel 5:20. But when his heart was lifted up and his mind, see that word mind? That's the same word for spirit. And when his mind was hardened, or when his spirit was hardened in pride, he was disposed from his kingly throne. And that happens to you and me, but there again, you don't want to get rid of your mind because it's the same as getting rid of your spirit. So, man becomes a living soul. A living soul. Well, the word soul, nephesh, do you know that the word soul can also be used for the word mind? So, Lynn, you mean the word spirit, ruach, can be used for the word mind, and the word soul, nephesh, can be used for the word mind. Yes! Why do you think God gave you a mind? Do you have any idea?
So the two should function together.
Your mind, listen, your mind is not a part of the organ of the creation of this dualistic man. Your mind is outside that. Your mind is not your brain. Your brain responds to the mind. Your brain responds to your mind or the spirit mind. Your brain is not your mind. You know, if I was to say, touch your mind, if I had said what I just got through saying and I said, touch your mind, you know what every one of you would do? Touch your mind. Black. You'd slap yourself on the front of your forehead. That is not your mind. That's your brain. You know, I could touch myself anywhere on my body and say, here's my mind. Because your mind encompasses your entire body. And your mind works through your entire body through an avenue called your sensual apparatus. So you might, have you ever saw something through your eye apparatus, through your vision apparatus, and it triggered your mind? Through seeing, you thought? Well, of course. If you take away your mind, if you take away your ability to see, if you're going to destroy your mind, you're going to destroy your spirit, your ruach. Paul said it this way. He said, whatsoever things are true, pure, just, lovely, good report, think. What do you use to think with? Your mind. You don't use your brain to think with, you use your mind to think with. Your brain is an organ that's running and doing a billion things right now in one instant. It's doing everything in your physical body. That's the function of your brain. But your brain also picks up the energy of your mind, and if that energy is low and negative, guess what it does? It triggers your body to respond to that. Because it's all made, your brain, they say your brain is 95% water. This big jug of water in the top of my head, is it responding to the things I'm thinking? Oh, you better believe it is. You better believe it. Is it responding to your mind? Yes, whether it's the mind from the lower or the mind from the upper. But it's just one mind, and you can pervert it by dragging it down because you're water and he moved into you. My. Let me read you this. Some things this guy said in the fourth phase of water. This book come out after Emoto's book, I think around 2011. And this chapter is chapter 7 in this particular book, the fourth phase of water. It's called the engine of nature. The engine. The motor of nature. Can water really contain energy? Early pioneers, including Victor Schottenberger and Rudolf Steiner, provided ample evidence that water could store and deliver energy, and contemporary scientists are beginning to revisit this possibility. But on the other hand, conventional wisdom says otherwise. A closed bottle of water sitting on your table top, considered in equilibrium with the environment might heat up and transfer energy to the water, but other than that, this slow thermal process, no obvious mechanisms should allow the water to receive and store energy, let alone deliver it. What is water? Now that's conventional wisdom. You're like, no, that water doesn't have an ability to contain my thought. It does. Water is water. Dull as a doorknob and hardly a vehicle for storing any kind of energy beyond low-grade heat energy. That's the common consensus of it. That's what you would have thought before you heard what I'm saying. But the truth of the matter is, and science has proven this out, that water is energy, that water is intelligent, that water reads you before you read it. A lake, You know, a lake reads you when you walk up to it. You get this is a fact. And if you're afraid of that water and you get in that water, you know what that water will do? It reads the energy of you, and that water will suck you into it. If you're not afraid of it and you're comfortable in it and you can get out in it, then you can just lay back and you can just float. Now, what's the difference between somebody floating in water and somebody drowning in water? What's the difference? It's their thought. It's their own energy. It's their own energy not being in harmony with the energy of the water around. How many of you know what I'm saying? I mean, now I grew up a lot, especially in my young life, in water. I water skied, God, for years and years. I could, I water skied on boat pedals. I water skied barefoot. I tried water ski on beer bottles. But I thought the best thing to do with that was just fill the lake up with beer bottles back then. Water, listen to this. When water absorbs light, here it is. Water, fire, power, balancing its power. When water absorbs light, the absorbed energy builds structural order and drives charge separations. That stored potential energy is harvestable. Charge separation can produce electrical current, and structural order can drive cellular work. These conversions confirm water's ability to store and to deliver potential energy, without a doubt. Now, I'm going to close. I want to read you these notes. This is Alvin Boyd Kuhn, and this is his little book.
Imagine that.
Yeah, if you find that book, give me that book. Heart Messiah Speaks. I can't find it nowhere. If you find it, give me an extra copy. Okay, this is a critique on Hindu philosophy. The pro and con. That's all it is. It's just a critique to show you the pro and the con. Ancient divine philosophy, or he uses the word sagacity, from the word sage or master. So I could say the ancient divine masters declared that man was a worshiper of idols as long as he worshipped any power outside himself. That to me bears repeating. That man worships idols as long as he worships a power outside himself. Now that is a perfect picture of Christianity today. Because the only power they worship is outside them, begging it to do something for them. God has placed within him the power he must worship. And until he adores that innermost sanctity of his own holy of holies, he is worshiping a vain, empty idol. That's a powerful statement in my opinion. But it's a perfect picture of what I see, because that was how I was taught to begin with. You know, that God was out there, somewhere out there, and then his son died for me, and his son's out there, but then they confused me, and they said, well, ask his son to come into your heart. And I thought, how in the world does that happen? He's out there building me a house in the corner of glory, a cabin, a cabin. I'm getting a cabin. I'm not going to get a big house. I'm just getting a cabin. According to your works, everybody works different. So I got me a cabin in the corner of glory. Jesus is up there building it, and I'm sending up boards, or I'm not sending up nothing. If I ain't sending up nothing, I ain't got much to go to. But at least I get to go outside, idle. And it's so clear to me that I have to take that and reverse that. If I'm going to be what God has called me to be, I have got to worship that's inside me. I've got to realize I am the Holy of Holies. I am the sanctified place. I am that place that I can go in through the veil into the Holy of Holies. I wrote a note here. I take these books and I write as much as they do. I want to just read you my note. The only place to true peace, to true freedom, to true happiness is within the Holy of Holies of your own heart. Placing your power outside your being is to build an idol that can really do nothing for you. Religion has deceived us for hundreds, even thousands of years by putting our focus in heaven and a God or a Savior somewhere out there in eternity, outside of time. Outside of time. Outside of time. That's where we want God to be, right? That's where we place Him. Let me read you something that he said in his book. He says, it all stems from the accolade of good and glory. Time is stamped with the mark of evil. In a warped theological systemology, the subjection of a divine unit of life to the stress and illusion of the time sense is to demean and defame it. Time is the enemy of eternity as matter is that of spirit. Now that's what they were trying to sell the idea, to get out of time. Obliterate time, encapsulate yourself straightway into supernatural timelessness is a blatant cry of childish impatience and its ignorance. I would have to say amen. I agree with that completely. So, to place God outside time, or in other words, He's in heaven, where there will be no more sun, no more time. Right? Isn't that what they taught us? Got to go outside. God came into time. Timelessness came into time. Why? To experience the beauty of it. To experience the glimmer, the glory, the splendor of this thing we call time. It all stems, that was that quote from I just read over there. Yet to use the characters, the stories and the allegories and the myths as stepping stones, as a ladder, and not make them an outer idol to lift oneself, to make those stories in the Old Testament a ladder, a stepping stone, to lift myself in time to the place of timelessness that's in the core of my heart, of my very being. That's the place that I want to go. That's the place that you and me need to strive for, to bring our mind, not get rid of it, not destroy it, to bring my mind into that place where I live my life by the mind of Christ. That is my very being. That is the root of my being. That's the root of who I am. That's my goal. Pray that that would be our goal as a body, and that I would, by being that, by doing that, I would raise myself up into that place that God has always designed me to be. Not out of here, but in here. Being as God is. Amen.
Amen.